Do you remember the first time you saw a tank rolling past your eyes? The ground shaking, the deafening roar of the engine, and that physical presence that felt more like something from another planet? Now imagine machines even more absurd. Vehicles so massive, so heavy, or so ridiculously powerful, they seem to have been designed outside any limits of logic or engineering. Some of them are so monstrous, it almost feels like a bad joke, but they exist. Or at least, almost did. Have you ever stopped to think how far humanity has gone in the name of power and domination? Or better yet, how far it should have stopped? Because what you're about to see today isn't just a list of military vehicles. These are mechanical aberrations that defy common sense, with dimensions so extreme, sounds so overwhelming, and purposes so excessive, they probably should be illegal. Pure engineering insanity. Ready to discover the most outrageous machines that ever challenged reason on the battlefield? Stick around, because the last one on this list is so insane, you'll understand why it never left the drawing board, and yet, it still haunts engineers to this day. T-28 Super Heavy Tank, 1945 United States. The end of World War II brought a flood of military experiments into the world, but few draw as much attention as the T-28. An American tank built in 1945 with a single goal: to be indestructible. Built in the United States, the T-28 was a U.S. Army project meant to create a tank heavy enough to breach the most fortified German defenses. The idea was simple. If a regular tank couldn't get through, build one that could just crush everything in its path, literally. And the result was a true steel colossus. 95 tons of armor, over 6 meters long, nearly 4 meters wide, and with a look that seems straight out of a sci-fi movie. As absurd as it sounds, it's still the smallest machine on today's list. It had a V12 gasoline engine, delivering enough power to move this wall of steel on tracks, but slowly. Its top speed was just 13 kilometers per hour. But that power was focused on getting it over obstacles and withstanding practically any weapon of the time. A fortress on treads. It had full track drive, a reinforced torsion bar suspension, and armor thickness reaching over 30 centimeters in some areas. The sound of this beast in motion was enough to send chills down the spine of any enemy soldier. The T-28 never saw combat. By the time it was ready, the war was over. But it was tested at military bases and left everyone stunned by its size and weight. In fact, during transportation, it had to be partially disassembled. The outer treads had to be removed and shipped separately by freight trains due to its extreme width. Today, one of the only surviving units is on display at Fort Moore in the United States. A true steel monster that never fought a war, but still draws gasps from anyone who sees it. And if that already sounds huge, wait until you see what's next, because the next take on this list nearly doubles it in size and weight. Maus Panzer VIII, 1944, Germany. If the T-28 seemed over the top, what can you say about the Maus? Developed by Nazi Germany in the final years of World War II, the Panzerkampfwagen 8 Maus, or simply Maus, is still considered the heaviest tank ever built. A 188-ton behemoth, so insanely large that one look is enough to understand why it probably should have been illegal. The Maus was born out of Hitler's obsession to build an invincible vehicle, capable of crushing any enemy by presence alone. The concept was simple. No hiding, no retreating. It would simply roll forward, imposing, indestructible, and unstoppable. At nearly 10 meters long and over 3 meters tall, the Maus looked more like a mobile bunker than a tank. It had a V12 gasoline engine, producing over 1,000 horsepower, but the extreme weight limited it to just 20 kilometers per hour, and even then, every meter it moved felt like the ground beneath it was ready to give out. Its armor, practically impenetrable at the time. The front turret was protected by up to 35 centimeters of solid steel. No Allied weapon could pierce that thick shell. Its main gun was a 128mm cannon, paired with a secondary 75mm coaxial gun. It was a rolling fortress, but it had a problem. It was too big to be useful. It couldn't cross most bridges, got stuck easily, and was almost impossible to transport. Even Germany struggled to move its prototypes between factories and testing grounds. In the end, only 2 prototypes were built, and neither saw combat. One remains today at the Kubinka Tank Museum in Russia, serving as a reminder of how far the pursuit of power can push the boundaries of engineering. There's even a story that during one field test, the mouse got stuck in the testing area and had to be left there for days. Because nothing available was strong enough to tow it out. Thought the T-28 was big? The mouse made it look like a toy. But hold on, because what's next isn't a tank, or even an armored vehicle. It's a truck, and not just any truck, one of absurd proportions. Zil E167, 1962, Soviet Union. Imagine an off-road truck, now multiply that by 10. Built in the 1960s in the Soviet Union, the Zil E167 was one of the boldest experimental vehicles the world has ever seen. At over 8.5 meters long, nearly 4 meters tall, 6 massive wheels, and 2 engines. Yes, 2 engines. The Zil was an attempt to conquer the most remote and unforgiving regions of Siberia. But it ended up becoming something so extreme, it looked like it came out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Its mission was ambitious: to explore untouched regions covered in deep snow, thick mud, and with 0 roads. To achieve that, Soviet engineers installed 2 5-liter V8 engines, one on each side, delivering a total of around 350 horsepower. Each engine powered 3 wheels, with traction split into 2 sets of axles. Its appearance? Unforgettable. A long nose, elevated cabin, triple-panel windshields, and wheels nearly 2 meters in diameter. When it roared to life, it sounded like a wild beast emerging from the ice. And once it moved forward, it crushed anything in its path like it was made of cardboard. The Zil E167 had a manual transmission, reinforced suspension, and special high flotation tires designed specifically to drive over soft snow without sinking. It was so wide that in some areas it couldn't even fit on existing trails. It had to make its own path using brute force. Only a single prototype was ever built. And while it impressed during testing, its high cost and complex maintenance sealed its fate. Still, the vehicle rests today in a Russian museum as a reminder of how far the Soviet Union was willing to go to conquer the impossible. There's even a story from a test expedition where the Zil drove straight across a frozen river, breaking through the ice with the front wheels, yet pushing through to the other side like nothing happened. If just one truck already seems overkill, imagine what came next, when engineers decided to build one to carry entire tanks. Oshkosh M1070 HET, 1992, United States. So what do you do when a tank is too big to move? Simple. You build a truck that's even bigger to carry it. That's exactly what the United States did with the Oshkosh M1070 HET. A 10-meter-long monster designed to easily haul tanks like the M1 Abrams. Built by Oshkosh Corporation in the early 1990s, the M1070 is a military truck with 8-wheel drive, built to transport heavy tanks and other oversized vehicles during logistics missions all over the world. And it's no exaggeration to say, the sound of it starting up is enough to stop conversations for blocks. It comes equipped with a Caterpillar V12 engine, delivering around 500 horsepower. Powerful enough to tow more than 70 tons, even through rough terrain, deserts, or mud. The cab is high and armored, offering protection from small arms and landmines. Inside, it looks more like the cockpit of a spacecraft than a normal truck. Panels full of buttons, levers, and screens. It's a rolling fortress. The suspension is reinforced with heavy coil springs and hydraulic dampers, built to handle extreme loads. The truck has full-time, all-wheel drive with lockable differentials, and the rear trailer, which looks like another vehicle on its own, can carry tanks of up to 70 tons with what looks like impossible stability. Interestingly, the M1070 is also used in civilian settings for extreme transport, like turbines, generators, or oversized industrial equipment. In some cases, even wealthy collectors of military vehicles have bought decommissioned units just to show off at giant machine meets. Fun fact, A modified M1070 appeared in Hollywood films, hauling fictional nuclear cargo during explosive chase scenes, and that wasn't CGI. It was the real deal. Enjoying this deep dive into the most absurd military machines ever built? Then drop a like to support the channel, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos. Now get ready, because what comes next goes beyond. It's a Soviet-built colossus made to carry everything from heavy tanks to nuclear missiles, and it turned destruction into a daily routine. MAZ-537, 1960s, Soviet Union. If you thought the Oshkosh M1070 was already massive, buckle up, because this next one is even wider, tougher, and was built for a mission far more terrifying: transporting nuclear missiles on wheels. The MAZ-537 is a military tractor developed by the former Soviet Union during the Cold War. It was created with a clear purpose: to haul extremely heavy strategic weapons like intercontinental missiles, heavy tanks, or mobile launch platforms. And for that, Soviet engineers spared no size or strength. At nearly 9 meters long, 3 meters tall, and with an enormous width, the MAZ looks more like a rail car than a truck. Its design commands respect: a flat front, armored cab, massive treads or oversized wheels, depending on the version, and a rear section built to carry monstrous payloads. Its engine is a V12 diesel with a mind-blowing 38 liters, generating over 500 horsepower. That's raw muscle, built to drag what were essentially mobile war machines, even across ice or rugged terrain. It has 8-wheel drive, with a full-time traction system and automatic transmission with multiple speeds. The suspension, of course, was custom-built to handle over 50 tons of cargo with stability and endurance. And the most shocking part? Despite its size, it could maintain speeds over 60 kilometers per hour on solid ground, which for a beast like this is almost unreal. So why should this be considered illegal? Simple. No wheeled vehicle should be capable of transporting nuclear weapons with this much efficiency. The MAZ-537 turned the delivery of destruction into something routine, fast, reliable, and eerily quiet. It gave the Soviet Union a level of nuclear mobility that terrified its adversaries. There's a well-known account of a convoy of MAZ trucks crossing a border at night carrying mobile ballistic missiles, a move that triggered multiple intelligence alerts in several countries simultaneously. And the worst part, it wasn't even a provocation. It was just a routine exercise. Today, many of these machines are still in use, repurposed for civilian heavy-duty transport. Some have ended up in private collections, or even in Russian music videos. Because yes, the MAZ's visual presence is so iconic, it became a symbol of power and endurance. But if you think Soviet engineering peaked there, wait until you see what they built next. A 2-module tracked vehicle, the size of a freight train. Vityaz DT-30PM, modern-day Russia. We've reached the first fully articulated vehicle on this list. And we're not talking about your average tractor. This is a tracked war train, designed to go where no truck, tank, or even helicopter dares to venture. The Vityaz DT-30PM is a Russian-built vehicle designed specifically for extreme environments, like Siberia, the Arctic, and combat zones covered in deep snow or swampland. And when we say extreme, we mean it. It's over 10.5 meters long, more than 3 meters tall, and so wide it makes most tanks look narrow. All that, split across 2 articulated modules, connected by a hydraulic pivot system that lets the vehicle flex and twist like a giant metal serpent. Its engine is a V12 diesel with around 750 horsepower, paired with a heavy-duty automatic transmission. The Vityaz moves on wide rubber tracks that spread its weight over a huge surface area, allowing it to float over frozen swamps or muddy terrain with shocking ease. Visually, it's striking, more like a mobile command base than a vehicle. The front cabin fits up to 4 soldiers, while the rear module can carry cargo, troops, or even heavy weapons. Its torsion bar suspension and quad-track system allow it to climb steep slopes, cross frozen rivers, and roll through shattered ice fields like a regular Jeep climbing a gravel hill. But what makes the Vityaz truly insane and arguably illegal, is its ability to operate in temperatures below -50 degrees Celsius, while still functioning like it's on a warm testing field. It's so rugged and reliable that it's become the backbone of Russian Arctic operations, including classified military missions. There's even a case where one of these vehicles was used to transport a portable nuclear reactor during a logistics experiment, traveling hundreds of kilometers without a single mechanical failure. And yes, that happened in deep frozen territory. When it comes to extreme mobility, the Vityaz feels unfair. Nothing in the Western world comes close to matching its efficiency in frozen conditions. If a 2-module track tractor already sounds like overkill, what would you say about a military helicopter so massive it can lift tanks clean off the ground? Mi-26 1977, Soviet Union, the largest military helicopter ever built. The only one on Earth capable of lifting over 20 tons of payload like it's nothing. Or rather, with a 32-meter main rotor spinning above your head. Developed in 1977 by the Soviet Union, the Mi-26 isn't just a helicopter. It's a flying titan. At 40 meters long, with a dual cockpit, reinforced landing gear, and 8 main rotor blades, it makes any standard helicopter look like a toy. Its powertrain? Not 1, but 2 turbine engines, delivering over 11,000 combined horsepower. That's right, 11,000 horses pulling this beast through the air. And thanks to that power, the Mi-26 can fly with tanks, armored vehicles, full-sized containers, radio towers, or whatever else needs moving. Its original purpose was to transport troops and gear to remote forward bases where no ground vehicle could go. But in practice, it became so powerful and reliable, it was used in rescue missions, firefighting, humanitarian operations, and even during the Chernobyl disaster to remove radioactive reactor parts. The noise it makes at liftoff is indescribable. Part thunder, part ship engine, part hurricane. And when it hovers, the rotor blast is strong enough to knock down small trees. That's when you realize why this thing probably shouldn't be flying near civilian areas. And here's a wild fact. There's actual footage of a Mi-26 lifting another crashed helicopter out of the mountains in Afghanistan. Yes, it became a literal aerial tow truck. If the idea of a helicopter that strong and that big already feels insane, then hold on, because what comes next doesn't fly high or float. It skims over the sea, powered by jet engines and bigger than most buildings. Kirov-class battlecruiser, 1980, Soviet Union. Can you imagine a warship with 2 nuclear reactors, over 250 meters long, and armed with enough firepower to wipe out an entire naval fleet? That's exactly what the Soviet Union built in the 1980s with the Kirov-class battlecruisers. These ships aren't just vessels, they're floating fortresses, loaded with weaponry and powered by nuclear energy. And the reason they should be considered borderline illegal isn't just their size, it's the sheer destructive capability they bring to the water. Each Kirov carries hundreds of missiles, including anti-aircraft, anti-ship, and cruise missiles. And get this, they run with a crew of over 700 people who live on board as if it were a city at war. At the heart of the Kirov is a propulsion system powered by 2 nuclear reactors, supported by turbines. This allows it to sail for months without refueling, at speeds up to 50 kilometers per hour, which is staggering for a ship of this scale. The visual impact? A gigantic steel hull slicing through the sea with military precision. A tower packed with radar domes, missile silos spread across the deck, gun turrets, anti-aircraft arrays, and torpedo launchers. It looks like something from another planet. Today, only one Kirov-class ship remains in active service, the Pyotr Veliki, or Peter the Great. But even in peacetime, its presence near international waters triggers alarms in NATO fleets. Some military analysts say a single Kirov could sink an entire fleet of destroyers and frigates by itself. And that's without even using its full arsenal. But if a warship already sounds terrifying, imagine a hybrid between a ship and a plane, gliding just meters above the water, carrying the payload of a cargo jet. Now that flirts with the truly forbidden. Ekranoplan KM Caspian Sea Monster 1966, Soviet Union. This is where things go completely off the rails. The KM Ekranoplan, nicknamed the Caspian Sea Monster, was such an outlandish experiment that even American spy satellites at the time couldn't figure out what they were seeing. At 92 meters long and weighing over 500 tons, the KM was a flying vehicle that didn't actually fly, but it also didn't float like a ship. It used what's called the ground effect, allowing it to glide over a thin layer of air between the hull and the surface of the water. Powered by 10 jet engines, the KM could reach speeds of up to 500 kilometers per hour, flying at just 4 meters above sea level. Think of it as a cargo missile, massive, fast, and impossible to intercept, and that's exactly why it should have been banned. No defense system of the time could detect or stop it. It flew too low for air defense radars and too fast for naval systems. Plus, it had the capacity to carry troops, vehicles, or even lightweight nuclear payloads. A geopolitical nightmare in motion. The first time US intelligence spotted it, they thought it was some kind of flying aircraft carrier. No one knew what it was or how to counter it. And the Soviet Union kept the entire project highly classified for years. Visually, the Ekranoplan looked like a mashup between a jumbo jet and a battleship, with a low-profile fuselage, stubby wings, and a hull designed to skim the water. It was so absurd, you have to see it in motion to believe it. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, the project was scrapped after an accident in the 1980s. But to this day, engineers and military analysts still wonder what the world would look like if these monsters had ever entered full-scale service. If you love military engineering and you've been enjoying this parade of unbelievable machines, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell because we've saved the craziest one for last. A tank ship hybrid with nearly 1,000 tons of steel, and yes, it almost existed. Landkreuzer P.1000 Rate, Germany design proposal 1940s. Insanity has a name. And in this case, it's Landkreuzer P.1000 Rate, the largest tank ever envisioned by human hands. A project so outlandish that if completed, it would have been the biggest land vehicle in military history, far beyond any physical, logistical, or strategic limits. The Rate was proposed by Nazi Germany during World War II as a so-called land cruiser. The concept? Build a tank the size of a battleship, with impenetrable armor and firepower capable of obliterating anything in its path. Let's start with the numbers. 35 meters long, 14 meters wide, nearly 12 meters tall, and a projected weight of 1,000 tons. That's right, 1,000 tons. Heavier than a modern freight locomotive, fully loaded. And it only gets crazier. Its main armament would be 2 naval turrets, each with dual 280mm cannons, the same caliber found on actual battle cruisers. It would also carry multiple machine guns, secondary cannons, and even anti-aircraft systems. Its engines? 2 submarine diesel engines, each generating several thousand horsepower. Combined, they would produce somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 horsepower, giving the Rate a theoretical top speed of 40 kilometers per hour. That is, if it could even move under its own weight, which is doubtful. The suspension system would have required dozens of massive axles and double-wide tracks, and even then, the ground pressure would have been so extreme that it would destroy any road it rolled over. No bridge could support it. No rail line could carry it. The Rate was simply too big for the real world, and that's exactly why it should be considered illegal by design. Not just because of its monstrous size or impracticality, but because it represents the peak of wartime madness, a symbol of how ego, megalomania, and obsession with power can lead to ideas that completely defy military logic. Thankfully, the project was cancelled in 1943, when even German engineers realized it was unbuildable during wartime. But the fact that it was approved by Hitler and construction even started at Krip's facilities shows how real and dangerous the concept was. Today, the Rate lives only in blueprints, sketches, and 3D recreations, but it continues to inspire games, films, and sci-fi stories as the ultimate symbol of unhinged military engineering. So, can Can you believe the size of these machines? Today you saw a parade of military giants that seem like they came from a parallel universe. From tanks so heavy no bridge could hold them, to helicopters that can lift other helicopters, and nuclear warships the size of floating cities. But more than engineering, these machines represent how far human ambition can go in the name of power, even when it means defying physics, logistics, or common sense. Because in the end, these aren't just machines. They're metallic monuments to an era where winning a war seemed more important than respecting the limits of reality. They're armored legends that force us to ask, how far is too far when it comes to domination? Now tell me in the comments, which of these machines did you find the most over-the-top or downright unnecessary? And of course, which one do you think should have been banned before it ever left the drawing board? If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because every week we bring you new videos about the most extreme, insane, and unbelievable machines ever made to conquer snow, war, and the limits of engineering. See you in the next video.